Growing up, my brother Ethan and I were inseparable. He was my best friend, my protector, my confidant. I never imagined he would one day stand before me and say those words, "Olivia, you're not invited to my wedding." And I certainly never thought that after excluding me, he'd still expect to use my vineyard venue for free. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I own Willow Creek Estate, one of the most sought-after wedding venues in the Napa Valley. The sprawling vineyard with its rustic barn and panoramic mountain views books out 2 years in advance. People pay tens of thousands to celebrate their special day here. But family is family, and I had always promised Ethan that when his day came, Willow Creek would be his. I just never expected that offer would stand even when I wasn't welcome at the celebration. The betrayal didn't happen overnight. Looking back, I can trace the fracture to the day Vanessa entered our lives. Ethan met her at a charity gala in San Francisco 5 years ago. I was supposed to attend with him, but a last-minute emergency at the vineyard kept me away. The next morning he called me, voice breathless with excitement. "Liv, I met someone last night. She's incredible." His voice had that quality I'd never heard before, a mixture of wonder and certainty. I was thrilled for him. At 34, Ethan had dated plenty, but never seemed to find someone who matched his energy and ambition. As the CEO of a successful tech startup, he worked long hours and traveled constantly. Previous relationships had crumbled under the weight of his dedication to his career. But now he sounded different, lighter somehow. "Tell me everything," I said, settling onto my porch swing that overlooked rows of grapevines stretching toward the mountains. Her name is Vanessa Chen. She's a marketing executive for Lumina Brands. Liv, she's brilliant and beautiful and funny. He paused. "I know it sounds crazy after one night, but I think she might be the one." I laughed. "Slow down, Romeo. Get a second date first." But Ethan was right. Within 6 months, Vanessa had moved into his San Francisco loft. By their 1-year anniversary, they were discussing marriage. I was happy for him, truly. But something about Vanessa always felt calculated. The way her smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. How conversations stopped abruptly when I entered rooms. I tried to brush it off as insecurity. After all, Ethan and I had always been unusually close. Our parents died when I was 22 and he was 24, a head-on collision with a drunk driver on their way home from their anniversary dinner. The tragedy had bonded Ethan and me even more tightly. We were all each other had left. "She's probably just intimidated by your relationship," my best friend Maya suggested when I confided my concerns. "Give her time, she'll realize you're not a threat." I took Maya's advice. I made extra efforts with Vanessa, inviting her for spa days, sending her birthday gifts, including her in family traditions. But the distance between us only seemed to grow. Still, for Ethan's sake, I persisted. Then came the engagement. Ethan proposed on New Year's Eve with a 5-carat diamond ring and a helicopter ride over the Golden Gate Bridge. It was extravagant, romantic, and perfectly tailored to Vanessa's taste for luxury. I found out via Instagram hours before Ethan called me. "I'm sorry you had to see it online first," he said, sounding genuinely remorseful. "Everything happened so fast, and then Vanessa was posting pictures." "It's fine," I said, swallowing my hurt. "I'm thrilled for you, Ethan, really." "Thanks, Liv." His relief was palpable. "And, about the venue? Is the offer still good? Vanessa absolutely fell in love with Willow Creek when we visited last summer." Of course it was still good. This was my brother, my only family. The brother who had held me through nights of grief after our parents died. Who had helped me realize my dream of turning our family's small vineyard into one of the region's premier wedding destinations. "Absolutely," I said without hesitation. Willow Creek is yours whenever you want it. No charge, obviously. Just let me know the date so I can block it off. You're the best, Liv. Seriously. We're thinking June 20th. Is that available? June 20th, our mother's birthday. The day we normally spent together, visiting her grave and then having a picnic with all her favorite foods. A tradition we'd kept for 8 years since her death. I hesitated only a moment. June 20th works. I'll block it off. Perfect. Vanessa will be ecstatic. She's already talking about color schemes and flowers. After we hung up, I sat on my porch for a long time, watching the sun sink behind the mountains. Change was inevitable, I reminded myself. Ethan deserved happiness. And if June 20th was now going to be about new beginnings rather than remembrance, perhaps that was a good thing. The following months were a whirlwind of wedding planning. Despite living only 45 minutes apart, I barely saw Ethan. Vanessa had hired a high-end wedding planner, Margot, who communicated with me about the venue details. I found myself in the strange position of being simultaneously essential, as the venue owner, and peripheral, as the bride's future sister-in-law. Vanessa would prefer if the oak barrels were removed from the east side of the barn, Margot informed me one afternoon as she surveyed the space. They don't fit her aesthetic. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The oak barrels had been part of the vineyard for generations. My father had positioned them specifically to showcase our family's winemaking history. Those barrels aren't decorative, I explained. They're functional. We're actively aging wine in them. Margot's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose slightly. Perhaps they could be relocated temporarily. Vanessa is quite particular about the visual experience. Particular. That word came up repeatedly in our interactions. Vanessa was particular about the lighting. Particular about where the catering station would be positioned. Particular about which vines could be visible. In photographs, each request chipped away at the venue that I had so carefully built, the space that held my family's legacy. But I agreed to most of them. For Ethan. 3 months before the wedding, I finally managed to get Ethan alone. He came to the vineyard on a rare free Saturday, ostensibly to discuss some final venue details. We walked the property together, the spring air fragrant with wildflowers and the earthy scent of the vineyard. Remember when Dad used to make us do vineyard tours for the guests? I asked, smiling at the memory. We'd have to recite all those facts about fermentation and soil composition. Ethan laughed. You were always better at it than me. You actually cared about the process. I just wanted to finish so I could go play video games. And now look at us. You're a tech mogul, and I'm still here among the vines. You've made this place spectacular, Liv, Ethan said, his voice softening as he surveyed the property. Mom and Dad would be so proud. The compliment warmed me. Speaking of Mom, I was thinking, since the wedding is on her birthday, maybe we could incorporate something small to honor her? Nothing that would detract from the celebration, just a subtle nod. Perhaps a special wine toast with Dad's favorite vintage. I watched Ethan's expression cloud. I don't think that's a good idea. Oh, I tried to hide my disappointment. No problem. I just thought, it's just that Vanessa wants the day to be about our future, not the past. She thinks wedding days should be free from reminders of loss. Something about his careful phrasing struck me as rehearsed. Those weren't your words just now, were they? Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. Liv, please don't make this difficult. Vanessa's parents are very traditional. They're paying for most of the wedding, and they have certain expectations. What does that have to do with honoring Mom? It's complicated. He stopped walking and turned to face me. There's something else I need to discuss with you. The serious note in his voice made my stomach tighten. What is it? It's about the wedding guest list. Let me guess. Vanessa has concerns about where to seat me? I attempted a joke. Not exactly. Ethan wouldn't meet my eyes. Vanessa and I have decided to have a specific type of wedding, very focused on certain cultural traditions that are important to her family. Okay. The ceremony and reception will be, well, there won't be any sisters of the groom present. I stared at him, certain I had misheard. I'm sorry, what? It's a specific cultural thing that's important to Vanessa's family, he repeated, the words coming faster now. Only certain family members are included in the formal celebration. Sisters of the groom aren't traditionally part of it. Blood rushed to my face. Are you telling me I'm not invited to your wedding? It's not that you're not invited exactly. It's that the ceremony has specific roles and… Ethan, I cut him off. Are you saying I cannot attend your wedding? Yes or no? He finally met my gaze, his expression pained but resolute. Yes, that's what I'm saying. The world seemed to tilt sideways. My brother, my only remaining family, was excluding me from the most important day of his life. This is insane. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. What cultural tradition excludes sisters? I've never heard of such a thing. It's complicated. Vanessa's family is very particular about… Particular. Yes, I've heard that word. A lot lately. Anger was replacing shock now. So particular that they're cutting out the only blood relative you have left? The person who has stood by you through everything? Liv, please try to understand. This is important to Vanessa. And what about what's important to you? What about our family traditions? What about everything we've been through together? This is exactly why we made this decision, Ethan said, his voice hardening. We knew you'd make it about you. The accusation stung like a physical blow. Make it about me? Ethan, I'm your sister. Your only sister. Your only family. Vanessa is my family now too. And her parents. They're contributing significantly to this wedding, and their customs deserve respect. I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. Okay, let's take a step back. If I'm not invited to the wedding, who exactly is the venue for? Just to be clear. Well, everyone else, Vanessa's extended family, our friends, business associates. So let me understand this correctly, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. You want to use my venue, for free, to host a wedding that I'm not allowed to attend? He had the grace to look uncomfortable. When you put it that way, it sounds bad. Because it is bad, Ethan. It's unbelievably hurtful. Look, if it's about the money, we can pay for the venue, he said quickly. It's not about the money. My voice echoed across the vineyard. It's about the fact that you're excluding me from your wedding but still expect to use the place that is not just my business but my home. The place that holds every memory of our family. I thought you'd understand, he said, his voice cooling. You always said Willow Creek would be mine when I got married. Yes, for a wedding I assumed I'd be part of, as your sister. We stood facing each other, two islands separated by an uncrossable sea. Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. It's Vanessa, he said. I need to take this. As he walked away to answer the call, I stood rooted to the spot, surrounded by the vineyard my parents had loved, that I had nurtured and expanded, the place that, until this moment, had represented everything good about my family. Ethan returned a few minutes later, his expression closed off. I need to go. Vanessa needs me for a meeting with the florist. We're not finished with this conversation, I said. I think we are. The decision has been made, Olivia. I'm sorry you can't respect it. Before I could respond, he was walking toward his car, phone already back at his ear, leaving me alone among the vines. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Ethan's words, searching for some explanation that made sense. What cultural tradition excluded sisters but included everyone else? Why was Vanessa so insistent on this point? And most confusingly, why was Ethan, who had always protected me, prioritized me, suddenly willing to cast me aside? Around midnight, I did what any person would do. I started researching wedding traditions around the world. Vanessa's family was Chinese American, so I focused there first. Hours of reading yielded nothing about excluding sisters of the groom. I expanded my search to other Asian cultures, then to obscure traditions globally. Nothing even remotely supported Ethan's claim. By 3 a.m., with a headache building behind my eyes, I reluctantly admitted what I had suspected all along. There was no cultural tradition. This was personal. Vanessa simply didn't want me there. The realization brought a strange clarity. This wasn't about respecting cultural differences. This was about Vanessa systematically removing me from Ethan's life, and my brother allowing it to happen. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke to sunlight streaming through my windows and a decision crystallizing in my mind. I reached for my phone and sent a text to Ethan. After careful consideration, Willow Creek Estate is no longer available for your wedding. I'll happily refund any deposits paid. I suggest you find a venue that aligns with your cultural traditions, preferably one where the owner is welcome to attend. His response came almost immediately. Are you serious right now? You can't do this. I replied with a single word, watch. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up. Texts from Ethan ranging from pleading to threatening, calls from Margot, the wedding planner, which I let go to voicemail. Even an email from Vanessa herself, the first direct communication she had initiated with me in months, expressing her disappointment in my unprofessional behavior. Unprofessional. As if this were merely a business transaction gone sour, not a profound betrayal between siblings. By afternoon, the situation had escalated further. Ethan showed up at my door, Vanessa in tow. I almost didn't answer, but some stubborn part of me wanted to face them, to make them say to my face what they had been orchestrating behind my back. This is ridiculous, Ethan fumed as soon as I opened the door. You're being childish and vindictive. Hello to you too, I said, not moving to let them in. And to answer your implied question, no, I haven't changed my mind. You promised me the venue, Ethan insisted. We've been planning around it for months. Invitations are already printed with this address. Yes, invitations to an event I'm not welcome to attend, in my own home. Vanessa stepped forward, her expression a careful mask of conciliation. Olivia, I understand you're upset, but surely we can discuss this like adults. I agree, I said. Let's start with an adult conversation about this mysterious cultural tradition that prohibits sisters at weddings. I'd love to learn more about it, since my extensive research last night turned up absolutely nothing. Vanessa's composure slipped slightly. Every family has their own interpretations of traditions. Interesting. And does every family also lie about those interpretations to exclude specific people? This is exactly why, Vanessa began. But Ethan cut her off. Liv, please, we can work this out. What do you want? To be invited? Fine, you're invited. The casual way he capitulated confirmed what I already knew. There had never been a legitimate reason for excluding me. Just Vanessa's preference, which he had prioritized over our relationship. It's too late for that, I said quietly. The fact that you're only including me now, under duress, says everything. This venue is no longer available to you. That's final. You can't do this, Ethan repeated, his voice rising. We have contracts. Actually, we don't, I pointed out. You wanted a family rate, free. Remember? We never signed anything. I'll sue you, he threatened, desperation creeping into his voice. For breach of verbal contract. You're welcome to try, but you might want to consider how it will look when people find out why. That you excluded your only sister from your wedding but still expected to use her property for free. Vanessa placed a restraining hand on Ethan's arm. This isn't productive, she said tightly. We need to explore other options. That seems wise, I agreed. This isn't over, Ethan warned as Vanessa pulled him toward their car. You're making a huge mistake. No, I called after them. For the first time in a long time, I'm standing up for myself. The mistake was ever thinking I had to accept being treated this way. As their car disappeared down my driveway, I felt something unexpected. Relief. For years, I had contorted myself to maintain my relationship with Ethan, making excuses for his gradual withdrawal, accepting Vanessa's thinly veiled hostility. I had been so afraid of losing the only family I had left that I had allowed myself to be diminished, pushed aside, and now explicitly excluded. No more. Whatever happened next, I would face it on my own terms. I didn't hear from Ethan for a week. In that time, I received a formal email from Margot stating that they had secured an alternative venue, a luxury hotel in Sonoma, and requesting that any planning materials related to Willow Creek be forwarded to her. I complied, professionally, and completely. I even included detailed notes on vendors who worked well with the space, though I knew they'd be starting from scratch with new suppliers. It wasn't the venue's fault that its owners had created this situation. What I didn't expect was the phone call from my cousin Rachel, whom I hadn't spoken to in months. What the hell is going on with you and Ethan? She demanded without preamble. I just got the strangest call from him asking if I was still invited to the wedding. Invited? I repeated, confused. Why wouldn't you be? Apparently, Rachel said slowly, there's some drama about sisters not being allowed at the wedding. And since I'm your cousin, they're re-evaluating whether I should be there. Olivia, what is this nonsense? The realization hit me like a thunderbolt. They're uninviting family members who might be loyal to me. That's insane. What kind of wedding excludes family members based on allegiance? The kind planned by someone who wants to isolate my brother from everyone who knew him before, I said quietly. Rachel's voice softened. Liv, are you okay? This sounds serious. Was I okay? The question caught me off guard. For so long, I had pushed down my concerns about Vanessa's influence over Ethan, telling myself I was being oversensitive or overprotective. But now, with this new development, I couldn't deny the pattern anymore. I'm worried about him, I admitted. This isn't like Ethan. He's always valued family above everything. Now he's cutting ties with everyone who was close to us growing up. People change when they get into relationships, Rachel said carefully. But this seems extreme. Has he explained why you're being excluded? He tried to claim it was some cultural tradition of Vanessa's family. But I researched it extensively, and it's not a thing. They just don't want me there. That makes no sense. You and Ethan have always been joined at the hip, especially after Aunt Marie and Uncle Daniel died. Hearing our parents' names spoken aloud sent a pang through my chest. I know. That's why this hurts so much. After talking to Rachel, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in a long time, looking through old family photos. Pictures of Ethan and me as children, covered in grape juice after helping with the harvest. Ethan at his high school graduation, with me, 4 years younger, beaming beside him. The two of us holding hands at our parents' funeral, shell-shocked, but standing together. What had happened to that bond? When had things changed? I paused on a photo from Christmas 2 years ago, the first holiday after Ethan had started dating Vanessa. In it, Ethan sat between Vanessa and me on the couch in my living room. Looking at it now, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Vanessa's hand possessively gripping Ethan's arm, her body angled slightly away from me, her smile tight and performative. Had the signs been there all along? Had I been too determined to make things work, to welcome her into our small family, that I'd missed the red flags? As I continued through the photos, I noticed a gradual change in Ethan himself. In recent images, he looked more polished, more carefully composed. Designer clothes replacing his usual casual style, his posture stiffer, his smile less spontaneous. It was as if he were playing a role, one carefully crafted to fit into Vanessa's world. The next day, I did something impulsive. I drove to Ethan's office in San Francisco. We hadn't spoken since the confrontation at my house, but I needed to talk to him, really talk to him, without Vanessa present, without the wedding drama looming over us. His assistant recognized me immediately. "Miss Campbell, it's been ages. Is Mr. Campbell expecting you?" "No," I admitted, "but it's important." She hesitated only briefly before picking up the phone. "Mr. Campbell, your sister is here to see you." A pause. "Yes, sir." She hung up and smiled at me. "He'll be right out." Moments later, Ethan appeared, surprise evident on his face. "Olivia, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you," I said simply. "Just you. No Vanessa, no wedding planners, no lawyers, just brother and sister." Something flickered across his face, uncertainty, maybe even longing. Then he nodded. "Let's go for a walk." We exited the sleek office building and headed toward a nearby park. For several minutes, we walked in silence, the tension between us a physical presence. Finally, I spoke. "Do you remember Dad's 50th birthday? When we convinced him the vineyard had been hit by frost overnight, and he ran out in his pajamas to check the vines." A reluctant smile tugged at Ethan's lips. "And then all the neighbors jumped out with birthday banners and champagne. He was so mad at us," I laughed, "and then so touched he cried. Dad always did wear his heart on his sleeve." "Like you," I said softly. "You used to anyway." Ethan's smile faded. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I don't recognize you anymore, Ethan. The brother I knew would never exclude me from his wedding. He would never prioritize his fiancé's unexplained preferences over his relationship with his only sister." People change when they get married, Olivia. They form new primary relationships. That's normal. New primary relationships, yes. Completely severing existing ones? That's not normal. That's concerning. He stopped walking. "Is that what you came here to say? That you're concerned about my relationship? Because if so, you've wasted a trip." "I came here because I love you," I said, meeting his gaze directly. "And because I'm afraid you're being isolated from everyone who knew and loved you before Vanessa came into your life." "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Rachel called me. "You're re-evaluating whether she should be at the wedding because she's my cousin and might be loyal to me. What about Uncle Jack? Aunt Sophia? Are they being scrubbed from the guest list too?" Ethan looked away. "The venue change necessitated some adjustments. The new space is smaller." "The Sonoma Valley Grand Hotel is not smaller than my barn, Ethan. Stop lying to me." "What do you want from me?" he demanded, frustration breaking through his composed exterior. "I want my brother back," I said simply. "I want the person who held my hand at Mom and Dad's funeral and promised we'd always have each other, no matter what. I want the Ethan who would never let anyone come between us." For a moment, I thought I saw that Ethan, my Ethan, surface in his eyes. A flicker of recognition, of the bond we'd shared. Then his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his expression shuddered. "I need to take this," he said, stepping away. I stood there watching as he spoke in low tones, his body language shifting before my eyes, becoming more formal, more contained. When he returned, the wall was back up. "I have to get back to the office," he said. "Vanessa and I have a meeting with the new venue coordinator in an hour." I nodded, a heaviness settling in my chest. "Of course." "Olivia." He hesitated. "I'm sorry things worked out this way. But the wedding is happening. With or without Willow Creek. With or without you. The words struck deeper than he probably intended. With or without you. The story of our relationship these past few years. I know, I said quietly. I just hope someday you'll look back and wonder if it was worth it, cutting out the people who loved you first, who loved you unconditionally. You're being dramatic. I'm getting married, not joining a cult. But as he walked away, back straight and face impassive, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was watching him disappear into something I couldn't follow, couldn't save him from. Something he had chosen over the family we once were. I returned to Willow Creek that evening with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I had done everything I could. I had reached out, spoken my truth, offered a path back to the relationship we once had. Now, I had to accept that the choice was Ethan's, and it seemed he had already made it. The wedding was 3 weeks away. I had given up any hope of reconciliation, of receiving a last-minute invitation or apology. Instead, I threw myself into work, booking a small corporate retreat for the weekend that would have been Ethan's wedding, ensuring I would be too busy to dwell on what I was missing. Then, 5 days before the wedding, a text arrived from a number I didn't recognize. This is Vanessa's sister Grace. We need to talk about Ethan. Can you meet tomorrow? It's important. I stared at the text message from Vanessa's sister for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Every instinct warned me this could be a trap, another opportunity for humiliation, another chance for Ethan and Vanessa to paint me as the unreasonable, interfering sister. But curiosity won out. If Grace had reached out behind her sister's back, there must be a reason. Where and when? I replied. The response came almost immediately. Tomorrow, 1 p.m., Cafe Artemis on Fulton Street. Come alone. The melodrama of that last instruction would have made me laugh under different circumstances. Instead, I sent a simple thumbs-up emoji and put my phone away, trying not to build expectations about what this meeting might reveal. The next morning dawned foggy and cool, typical for early June in Northern California. I dressed carefully, not to impress, but to armor myself. Dark jeans, a crisp white button-down leather boots, professional, pulled together. The opposite of the emotional wreck they probably expected me to be. Cafe Artemis was a small, upscale coffee shop in a trendy district of San Francisco. As I pushed open the door, the rich aroma of freshly ground coffee enveloped me. The space was busy but not crowded, filled with the gentle hum of conversation and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine. I spotted her immediately. Grace Chen sat at a corner table, head bent over her phone. I had met her exactly twice. Once, at a dinner shortly after Ethan and Vanessa got engaged, and again at Vanessa's birthday party last year. Both times she had been polite but distant, clearly taking her cues from her sister on how to treat me. She looked up as I approached, her expression unreadable. Unlike Vanessa, who cultivated a sleek, polished appearance, Grace had a more understated style, minimal makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, clothes that prioritized comfort over fashion. "Olivia," she said, rising slightly as I reached the table. "Thank you for coming." "You said it was important," I replied, sliding into the chair across from her. "Something about my brother." Grace glanced around nervously before meeting my eyes. "I've been debating whether to contact you for weeks. Vanessa would be furious if she knew I was here. I'm guessing this means there's no sacred cultural tradition banning sisters from weddings?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. Grace had the grace to look embarrassed. "No, that was a lie. I figured as much. What I can't figure out is why. Why exclude me specifically? What exactly is Vanessa afraid of?" Grace took a deep breath. "That's why I wanted to talk to you. There are things happening that you should know about. Things that concern Ethan's well-being." A cold weight settled in my stomach. "What kinds of things?" Let me start from the beginning, Grace said, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug. Vanessa and we didn't have an easy childhood. Our parents had very specific expectations, especially for Vanessa as the oldest. Perfect grades, perfect behavior, perfect future. Nothing was ever good enough. I nodded, not seeing the relevance yet, but willing to listen. Vanessa developed this pattern. She would become obsessed with creating these perfect scenarios, these perfect relationships. But they had to be controlled entirely by her. Anyone who threatened that control became the enemy. And I threatened her control over Ethan, I surmised. Yes, but it's more than that. Vanessa doesn't just want Ethan to love her. She wants to recreate him in the image she's constructed. Successful tech entrepreneur, socially connected, part of the right circles. Your existence reminds him of a different life, different priorities. I thought about the changes I'd noticed in Ethan, the designer clothes, the careful speech, the way he seemed to check his phone whenever we spoke, as if waiting for permission or instructions. She's isolating him, I said quietly. Grace nodded. It starts small. Subtle criticisms of friends and family, scheduling conflicts that make it impossible to maintain certain relationships, creating situations where he has to choose between her preferences and his existing connections. Like a wedding venue, I said bitterly. Exactly like that. Grace leaned forward. But it's escalating, Olivia. In the past month, Ethan has stopped speaking to two of his oldest friends. He's withdrawn from the mentoring program he was so passionate about. He's even talking about relocating his company headquarters to be closer to Vanessa's family in Los Angeles, even though most of his team is based here. My chest tightened. Ethan loved San Francisco. He had built his company from the ground. Up here, crafted his life around the Bay Area. The vineyard was here. Our parents were buried here. Has he seemed different to you lately? Grace asked cautiously. Yes, I admitted. Less spontaneous, more guarded, like he's playing a role rather than being himself. That's exactly it. Grace lowered her voice. Look, I love my sister, but I've seen this pattern before. In college, she dated this guy. Smart, creative, from a working-class background. By the time she was done with him, he'd cut ties with his family, changed his major to something she approved of, and was parroting her opinions on everything from politics to music. He lost himself completely. What happened to him? Grace's expression darkened. He had a breakdown after they broke up, had to drop out of school. Last I heard, he was still trying to rebuild his life. Fear snaked through me. And you think Ethan is heading down the same path? I think he's already on it. Grace pulled out her phone and opened her photo gallery. Look at these. She handed me the phone. On the screen was a photo from what appeared to be a recent family dinner. Ethan sat next to Vanessa, his expression pleasant but vacant. As Grace swiped through more photos, I noticed the same empty smile, the same careful posture, as if he were a mannequin positioned precisely the way Vanessa wanted him. 2 months ago, he started taking medication, Grace continued, putting her phone away. Vanessa tells everyone it's for anxiety, but I overheard them arguing about it. He didn't think he needed it, but she insisted. My hand tightened around my coffee cup. That's not her decision to make. It is in Vanessa's world. She's convinced him that his occasional stress is actually a serious anxiety disorder that needs medication. She monitors his doses, praises him when he's good about taking it, criticizes him when he questions whether he needs it. That's not just controlling, it's abusive, I said, feeling sick. Why are you telling me this now? Why not months ago? Grace looked down. I didn't want to see it. Vanessa is my sister. I wanted to believe she had changed, that this relationship was different. And honestly, I was afraid of her reaction if I interfered. But something changed? Last week, I went to Ethan's office to drop off some paperwork for the wedding. His assistant was at lunch, so I went in without being announced. Ethan was on the phone, and he didn't see me at first. He looked broken, Olivia. He was arguing with someone, I think it was his business partner, about pulling their investment from a project he's been passionate about for years. Something about educational technology for underserved communities. I knew the project, she meant. It had been Ethan's dream since founding his company, creating affordable tech solutions for schools in low-income areas. It was the kind of work our parents would have been proud of. When he finally noticed me, he hung up immediately, Grace continued. The mask came back down so fast it was terrifying. That perfect smile, that rehearsed politeness. But for a moment, I saw the real Ethan, and he was drowning. Why would he abandon that project? I wondered aloud. It's been his driving mission for years. Vanessa thinks it's a waste of resources. She wants him focused on more profitable ventures, more prestigious partnerships, connections that can benefit her career too. I closed my eyes briefly, feeling the weight of everything Grace was sharing. So the wedding. The wedding is the culmination of her perfect vision, every detail controlled, every element curated, including the guest list. But why offer to pay for my venue if she was planning to exclude me all along? She never intended to go through with it. The plan was always to secure your venue, then create a situation where you would back out voluntarily. That way, she could paint you as the unreasonable one, the sister who selfishly withdrew her support. Except I didn't back out voluntarily. I withdrew the venue after they explicitly uninvited me. Which wasn't how the script was supposed to go, Grace. Agreed. You were supposed to get emotional earlier, make demands, throw a fit. Then she could have pointed to your behavior as proof that you shouldn't be at the wedding. When you stayed calm and reasonable for so long, they had to force the issue. The calculated manipulation made my head spin. All those months of being patient, of making accommodations, of swallowing my hurt. I had been playing right into Vanessa's hands without realizing it. Why are you risking your relationship with your sister to tell me this? I asked, studying Grace's face for any sign of deception. Because someone needs to stop this before it's too late. Ethan is being systematically cut off from everyone who truly cares about him. After the wedding, it will only get worse. Grace hesitated. And because I know what it's like to be controlled by Vanessa, I've spent my entire life in her shadow, following her rules, afraid to challenge her. I don't want to watch her do the same thing to Ethan. I believed her. The fear in her eyes was too real, the details too specific to be fabricated. What exactly do you expect me to do with this information? I asked. Ethan has made his choice. He chose Vanessa over me, over our family history, over everything we once shared. Did he, though? Grace challenged. Or has he been manipulated? To the point where he can no longer see what's happening to him? I thought about our last conversation, that brief moment when the real Ethan had surfaced, before Vanessa's call pulled him back under. Even if you're right, he's still marrying her in 5 days. The invitations have been sent, the new venue secured. What can I possibly do to stop it? I don't know, Grace admitted. But I do know that you're the only person left who might be able to reach him. The only one Vanessa hasn't completely poisoned him against yet. She's working on it, though, I said wryly. Yes, but the fact that she's had to work so hard proves how important you are to him. If you weren't a threat to her control, she wouldn't need to isolate him from you so completely. I sat back, processing everything. What about your parents? Surely they see what's happening. Grace's laugh was hollow. Our parents think Vanessa is perfect. They always have. In their eyes, she's making a brilliant match with a successful entrepreneur who can elevate their family's social standing. They've never cared about whether she's happy or whether her partners are happy, only about appearances and achievements. I thought about the few interactions I'd had with Mr. and Mrs. Chen, their cool politeness, their measuring gazes, the way they spoke about Ethan's company valuation rather than his character or compatibility with their daughter. So I'm on my own, I concluded. Not entirely. Grace reached into her bag and pulled out a small USB drive. This contains emails and text messages between Vanessa and me over the past year. Conversations where she explicitly discusses her methods for controlling Ethan, her plans for isolating him from you and others. There's also documentation of the medication situation, photos of pills, text exchanges about dosages. I stared at the innocent-looking drive. Why would you give me this? She's your sister. Because I love her enough to want her to stop this pattern. It's destroying her as much as it's destroying the people she controls. And because... Grace's voice wavered slightly. Because I remember Ethan from when they first started dating. How he talked about you, the vineyard, your parents. How his eyes lit up when he shared stories about your childhood. That person deserves to be saved. I took the USB drive, turning it over in my palm. If I use this, Vanessa will know it came from you. I know. Grace's expression was resolute. I've been complicit in her behavior for too long, making excuses, looking the other way. It's time I faced the consequences of standing up to her. As I drove back to Willow Creek that afternoon, my mind raced with possibilities and doubts. The USB drive felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. Part of me wanted to plug it in immediately, to see the evidence of Vanessa's manipulation firsthand. Another part hesitated, uncertain whether I was ready to see how deliberately my brother had been turned against me. When I finally reached the vineyard, I sat in my car for a long time, watching the sun cast long shadows across the rows of grapevines. This land had been in our family for 3 generations. My father had poured his heart into these grapes, teaching Ethan and me to respect the earth, to understand that good things take time, patience, nurturing. Had Ethan forgotten those lessons so completely? Inside my house, I poured a glass of our family's Cabernet, a vintage my father had bottled the year before he died, and finally plugged in the USB drive. What I found was worse than I had imagined. The emails between the sisters were damning. Vanessa outlining her strategies for separating Ethan from his friends, scheduling conflicts manufactured specifically to prevent him from attending events that mattered to him, discussions of which aspects of his personality needed to be fixed or refined. There were texts about the medication, something called lorazepam, which I discovered was a powerful anti-anxiety drug that could cause dependence and had side effects including confusion and memory problems. Vanessa's messages revealed she had been gradually increasing his dosage without his knowledge, mixing it into his morning smoothie when he resisted taking it. Most disturbing were the messages specifically about me. Vanessa's hatred seeped through every word, her determination to remove me from Ethan's life absolute and calculating. He mentioned visiting the vineyard again this weekend, she had written to Grace 3 months ago. I'll need to create a conflict. Perhaps schedule that dinner with the Goldmans? He can't refuse them if we want that investment. And later, I've convinced him the sister doesn't approve of me. Now whenever she expresses any concern, he sees it as her trying to sabotage our happiness. It's working perfectly. My hands shook as I scrolled through message after message, each one revealing another layer of manipulation. By the time I finished reading, night had fallen, and my glass sat untouched beside me. What Vanessa was doing wasn't just controlling, it was textbook emotional abuse. She was gaslighting Ethan, isolating him, medicating him without his full knowledge or consent, replacing his identity with one she had crafted to fit her idea of perfection. And my brother, My brilliant, kind, once independent brother was disappearing under her influence. I reached for my phone, then hesitated. Who could I call? Ethan would never believe me without proof, and showing him the messages would implicate Grace, potentially cutting off the only ally I had in Vanessa's circle. The wedding was in 5 days. What could I possibly do in such a short time? My gaze fell on a framed photo on my desk. Ethan and me at the vineyard's first commercial harvest after we took over from our parents. His arm was thrown around. My shoulders, both of us dusty and exhausted but grinning with pride. That bond couldn't be erased so easily, no matter what Vanessa had done to weaken it. I had to try to reach him, one last time. Not with accusations or ultimatums, but with the truth of who he was, who we were together. I needed to remind him of the person he had been before Vanessa began reshaping him into her ideal husband. The question was how. Showing up at his apartment would only lead to a confrontation with Vanessa. Calling would give him the option of ignoring me or hanging up. Emails could be deleted unread. I needed a way to speak to him alone, to show rather than tell him what he was losing, and suddenly I knew exactly what to do. The next morning, I called the one person who had known Ethan even longer than I had, his business partner and oldest friend, Marcus. We had never been particularly close, but Marcus had always respected the bond between Ethan and me. Olivia? He sounded surprised to hear from me. Is everything okay? No, I said frankly. Everything is not okay. I need to talk to you about Ethan. There was a pause. I've been worried about him too. Can we meet? Today, if possible. I can do lunch. There's a place near my office. Not in the city, I interrupted. I need you to come to the vineyard. There's something I want to show you. To his credit, Marcus didn't ask for an explanation. I can be there by noon. When he arrived, I led him not to the house, but to a small storage building near the edge of the property. It had once been a tool shed, but had been converted years ago into something between a clubhouse and a time capsule. Ethan and I had spent countless hours here as teenagers, plotting our futures, nursing broken hearts, celebrating victories. I unlocked the door and flipped on the light, revealing walls covered in photographs, concert tickets, hand-drawn maps of imaginary places. A battered couch sat against one wall, surrounded by milk crates filled with vinyl records, Ethan's collection that he had never moved to his city apartment. In one corner stood a small refrigerator, still stocked with the craft beers he preferred before Vanessa decided wine was more sophisticated. Marcus whistled low. I haven't been in here in years. Does Ethan still come out here? Not since Vanessa, I said quietly. She thought it was childish to have a space like this. Marcus ran his fingers along a shelf of books, dog-eared paperbacks on entrepreneurship, technology, philosophy, the foundations of Ethan's business philosophy. This explains a lot, he murmured. What do you mean? He turned to face me. Ethan is pulling out of our educational technology initiative, the project he's been passionate about since college, the whole reason we started the company. He says it's no longer aligned with his vision. It's not his vision that's changed, I said. It's Vanessa's influence. She's been systematically reshaping him, his priorities, his relationships, even his appearance. Marcus nodded slowly. I've noticed the changes, but I didn't understand how deliberate it was. He's canceled our weekly basketball games for months, stopped joining the team for beers after work, started dressing differently, talking differently. I assumed it was just the natural evolution of getting serious with someone. It's more than that. I hesitated, then decided to trust him with the full truth. Vanessa has been medicating. Him, Marcus. Anxiety drugs, slipped into his food when he refuses to take them. She's been isolating him from everyone who knew him before, including me. That's why I'm not invited to the wedding. His expression hardened. That's not just controlling, that's abusive. Exactly. And in 5 days, he's going to legally bind himself to her. I gestured around the shed. That's why I brought you. Here. I need your help to remind Ethan of who he really is, before it's too late. Marcus walked around the small space, taking in the artifacts of Ethan's true self. What's your plan? I want to bring him here. One last attempt to break, through whatever spell she's cast. But he won't come if I ask him directly. He's been conditioned to see me as the enemy. Marcus nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. But he might come if I ask him, a last-minute business emergency that requires his immediate attention. Exactly. Can you get him here tomorrow? Alone? I can try, but Olivia, even if we get him here, what then? People in abusive relationships often defend their abusers, even when presented with evidence. I know. I had spent the night researching emotional abuse, control tactics, and how to help victims. Everything I read warned about the difficulties of getting someone to recognize their situation when they were in the thick of it. But I have to try. He's my brother. I can't just stand by and watch her destroy him. Marcus studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll text you tomorrow. If I can get him away from the city, I'll bring him here around 2 p.m. After he left, I spent hours preparing the shed, making sure everything was perfect. I dug out old videos of Ethan and me as children, helping our parents with the harvest. I found the business plan he had written in college, outlining his vision for technology that would democratize education. I unearthed photos of him with friends he hadn't seen since Vanessa entered his life. Most importantly, I placed on the small table a legal document, the deed to half the vineyard, which had always been his, though he had allowed me to manage it all after our parents died. It was physical proof of his ties to this land, to our family's legacy, to me. That night, sleep eluded me. I kept thinking about the Ethan I knew, the brother who had taught me to ride a bike, who had held me through my first heartbreak, who had stood beside me at our parents' funeral and promised we would always have each other. That person couldn't be gone entirely. He had to still exist somewhere beneath the carefully constructed exterior Vanessa had created. The next morning brought a text from Marcus. Business emergency created. Coming to the vineyard at 2. He thinks we're meeting a potential investor who wants to see the property. Vanessa isn't happy but can't argue with a multi-million-dollar opportunity. Relief flooded through me. Step 1 accomplished. Now for the harder part, reaching my brother beneath the walls that had been built around him. I spent the morning obsessively checking and rechecking the shed, making sure everything was perfect. At 1:30, I positioned myself on the porch of the main house, pretending to work on paperwork while watching the long driveway. At precisely 2 p.m., Marcus's Tesla appeared, sending a plume of dust into the summer air. I watched as it parked, and 2 figures emerged. Marcus, looking determined, and Ethan, his posture stiff and professional even in this setting that had once been his most relaxed space. I stood, willing my racing heart to calm, and walked toward them. Olivia. Ethan's voice was cool, controlled. I wasn't expecting to see you. Marcus said we were meeting an investor. Marcus cleared his throat. Actually, there is no investor. Ethan, we need to talk. About you, about the wedding, about Vanessa. Ethan's expression hardened. If this is some kind of intervention, I'm not interested. He turned back toward the car. Wait, I called. Please, Ethan, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. He paused, his back to me. 5 minutes to tell me what a mistake I'm making? To try to convince me that Vanessa is somehow controlling me? I've heard it before, Olivia. No, I said quietly. 5 minutes to show you something important. Then if you still want to leave, no one will stop you. He turned slightly, suspicion warring with curiosity in his eyes. What is it? It's easier if I show you. It's in the old clubhouse. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, so brief I almost missed it. For a moment, the mask slipped, and I glimpsed my brother, the real Ethan. The clubhouse? He repeated, his voice softer. I haven't been out there in years. I know. I took a chance and stepped closer. That's why I think you should see it again. Before the wedding. He hesitated, glancing at his watch. A new, expensive timepiece that the old Ethan would have considered unnecessarily flashy. 5 minutes, he agreed reluctantly. Then I need to get back to the city. Vanessa and I have a dinner reservation at 7. I exchanged a glance with Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. This was it. My one chance to break through the walls, Vanessa, had built. To remind my brother of who he really was, before it was too late. As we walked toward the small building at the edge of the vineyard, I sent up a silent prayer to our parents. Help me reach him. Help me bring him back to himself. Before he disappears completely. The walk to the clubhouse felt impossibly long. Every step stirred memories. Ethan and me racing through the vineyard rows as children. Dad calling after us to be careful of the young vines. Teenage Ethan teaching me to drive our parents' old pickup truck in the back field. The two of us, sharing a bottle of our first successful vintage under the stars, toasting to Mom and Dad's memory. I glanced at Ethan walking beside me now, wondering if he was remembering too. His face remained impassive, but I noticed his pace slowing slightly as we approached the weathered building, his eyes lingering on the hand-carved sign above the Torsu Campbell hideout that he had made for my 16th birthday. It's exactly the same, he murmured, almost to himself. I've kept it up, I said simply. Some things are worth preserving. I unlocked the door and stepped back, letting him enter first. The interior was dim and cool, smelling of old books and cedar. I had deliberately left it exactly as it had always been, no strategic rearranging or emotional manipulation. If this was going to work, it had to be honest. It had to be real. Ethan stood frozen just inside the doorway, his gaze sweeping across the familiar space. For several heartbeats, no one spoke. Marcus hung back near the entrance, understanding instinctively that this moment needed to unfold between Ethan and me alone. You still have all this, Ethan finally said, his voice strangely hollow. Of course I do. I moved to stand beside him. It's part of our history. He stepped further into the room, his fingers trailing over objects from our shared past. The collection of smooth stones we'd gathered from every business trip our father took us on. The ancient trophy he'd won for a high school science competition. The framed business article that had first featured his company, with the quote about how his parents' values had shaped his entrepreneurial vision. I forgot about some of this, he admitted, picking up a faded photograph of us with our parents at the vineyard's 20th anniversary celebration. I don't think you forgot, I said gently. I think you were encouraged to put it aside. He shot me a warning look. Olivia, just look around, Ethan, that's all I'm asking. Something in my tone must have reached him, because instead of arguing, he continued moving through the space, examining the artifacts of his true self. He paused at the shelf of vinyl records, pulled one out at random, a limited edition indie, album he'd stood in line for hours to purchase. I've been looking for this, he said softly. I thought I'd lost it in the move. You left it here, I told him. Said it was safer in the clubhouse than in your city apartment. A small furrow appeared between his brows, as if he was trying to remember that conversation, but couldn't quite grasp it. He replaced the record carefully and moved to the bulletin, board where dozens of photographs were pinned, Ethan with his college friends, with his early business partners, with me at various stages of our lives. His gaze lingered on a particular image, Ethan with his arm around Jordan Green, his former roommate and close friend. They were grinning widely, standing in front of the office space where Ethan's company had first begun. When was the last time you talked to Jordan? I asked carefully. Ethan frowned. It's been a while. 2 years, I supplied. Since shortly after you started dating Vanessa. She said he was a negative influence, that he was jealous of your success. He was, Ethan said quickly, but the words sounded rehearsed. His startup failed while mine took off. It created tension. Did it? Because I remember Jordan being your biggest supporter. I remember him working unpaid for 3 months to help you launch your first product. I remember him celebrating every one of your successes as if it were his own. Ethan's jaw tightened. You don't know everything about my friendships, Olivia. Maybe not. But I know Jordan tried to contact you dozens of times after you cut him off. I know he came to the vineyard looking for you last Christmas because you weren't answering his calls. I know he was worried about you. Not jealous, not negative. Worried. Ethan turned away from the photos, but his gaze landed on the small table where I'd placed his half of the vineyard deed alongside the original business plan for his company. He picked up the yellowed pages, his expression softening as he scanned. The idealistic mission statement he'd written a decade ago. Technology is nothing if it doesn't serve humanity, he read aloud. Our mission is to create tools that eliminate barriers to education for every child, regardless of economic status or geography. That's still framed in your office. Marcus spoke up from the doorway. Or at least it was, until last month when you redecorated. Ethan glanced up, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features. The new design is more professional, more aligned with our current direction. Which is what, exactly? Marcus challenged. Because from where I stand, our current direction seems to be abandoning the principles that founded our company. We're focusing on profitability, Ethan replied, his voice taking on that slightly robotic quality I'd noticed more frequently in recent months. The educational initiative was draining resources without adequate return on investment. That's not you talking, I said quietly. Those aren't your words, Ethan. He set the business plan down with deliberate care. People grow up, Olivia. Priorities change. Just because I'm not the idealistic college kid who wrote that mission statement doesn't mean I'm being controlled. Then explain this. I moved to the small refrigerator and opened it, revealing not just the craft beers I'd mentioned to Marcus, but a collection of morning smoothies in glass bottles. Exact replicas of the ones Vanessa prepared for Ethan daily. Beside them sat a small vial of white powder and an eyedropper. Ethan stared at the display, confusion evident in his expression. What is this supposed to be? I made these smoothies exactly according to Vanessa's recipe, which Grace shared with me. The powder is crushed lorazepam, the medication Vanessa has been adding to your breakfast every morning, gradually increasing the dosage over the past 2 months. Ethan's face drained of color. That's ridiculous. Vanessa wouldn't drug me. She's been helping me manage my anxiety. With medication prescribed by a doctor you've never met, administered without your knowledge when you resisted taking it? I challenged. That's not help, Ethan. That's control. You've gone too far, he snapped, but I could see a seed of doubt in his eyes. This is exactly why you're not welcome at the wedding. You can't stand to see me happy, so you invent these wild accusations. They're not inventions, Marcus interjected. I've seen the changes in you, Ethan. We all have. But until Olivia showed me the evidence, I didn't understand how deliberate it was. What evidence? Ethan demanded. This was the moment I'd been dreading. I removed the USB drive from my pocket and held it up. Text messages, emails, photographs. A documented campaign by Vanessa to isolate you from everyone who cares about you, to reshape you into her idea of the perfect husband, to medicate you into compliance when you resist. Ethan stared at the tiny drive as if it might bite him. Where did you get that? From someone who cares about you. Someone who's been watching this happen and can't stay silent anymore. Grace, he whispered. and the flash of recognition in his eyes told me he had suspected something wasn't right, that some part of him had been aware of the manipulation all along. "Yes," I confirmed. "She came to me because she's worried. About you. Because she's seen Vanessa do this before." For a moment, conflict raged visibly across Ethan's face, the programming Vanessa had installed warring with the truth that was becoming increasingly difficult to deny. Then, abruptly, he checked his watch again. "I need to go. Vanessa will be waiting." The statement itself confirmed everything I was trying to prove. His immediate retreat to Vanessa when confronted with uncomfortable truths, the anxious checking of time, the fear of displeasing her. But I couldn't point that out without pushing him further away. "Take the USB, I said instead, holding it out to him. "Look at it or don't. That's your choice. But know that whatever you decide, I'm still your sister. I'll always be your sister, even if I'm not at your wedding." He hesitated, then took the drive, slipping it into his pocket. "This doesn't change anything, Olivia. The wedding is happening. In 4 days. At the Sonoma Grand." "I know." I forced a smile. "I hope it's everything you want it to be." His eyes met mine, and for a brief moment, I saw confusion there, as if he wasn't entirely certain what he wanted anymore. "I should go," he repeated, but made no move toward the door. "Away from anyone who might challenge her control," Marcus finished. We spent the next 2 hours planning, trying to anticipate Vanessa's next moves, strategizing how to protect Ethan if he did decide to break free. Marcus reached out to trusted colleagues at the company, quietly ensuring that Ethan couldn't make any drastic business decisions without multiple approvals. I called my lawyer, discussing options for protecting Ethan's share of the vineyard if things went south. "We should consider reaching out to Jordan," I suggested as evening approached. "If Ethan does look at the evidence and starts reconnecting with his true self, he might reach out to old friends for support." Marcus nodded. "Good idea. I've got his number." He pulled out his phone, then paused. "Wait, I've got a text from Ethan." My heart leaped. What does it say? Marcus's eyes widened as he read. "Need to talk, not at the apartment. Somewhere Vanessa won't think to look. Ideas." For the first time in months, I felt a surge of real hope. "Tell him to come. Here. To the clubhouse. Tonight." "Are you sure? If Vanessa is tracking his location, he can leave his phone in the city or turn off location services. If he's messaging you directly, he's already started taking precautions." Marcus typed quickly, then looked up. "Sent. Now we wait." The next 3 hours were the longest of my life. Marcus and I returned to the clubhouse, turning on lamps as darkness fell, stocking the small refrigerator with water and food, setting up a laptop where we could show Ethan the full extent of the evidence if he hadn't already reviewed it. "What? If he doesn't come?" I asked as the clock ticked past 9 p.m. "He'll come," Marcus assured me. "The fact that he reached out at all means he's seen enough to shake his trust in Vanessa. That's a huge step." At 9:37 p.m., headlights swept across the windows, not coming up the main driveway, but along the service road that ran behind the vineyard, accessible only to those who knew the property well. My heart pounded as I hurried to the door. Ethan emerged from a rental car I didn't recognize, his movements furtive as he glanced around the darkened vineyard. When he reached the clubhouse, his face in the lamplight looked haggard, his eyes bloodshot. "I told Vanessa I needed to work late at the office," he said without preamble as he stepped inside. "Left my phone on my desk with the location services enabled. Had my assistant occasionally move it around to different conference rooms. I don't have much time." The calculated deception was so unlike the straightforward brother, I knew that it momentarily stunned me. Then I realized this was probably the first independent action he had taken in months, the first time he had directly countered Vanessa's control. Whatever he had seen on that USB drive had affected him deeply. "You looked at the files," I said softly. He nodded, sinking onto the old couch. "Not all of them. Enough." He ran a hand over his face. I couldn't believe it at first. Thought maybe they were manipulated somehow. But there were too many details that rang true. Too many conversations I half remembered having with Vanessa that suddenly made sense in this new context. "The medication?" Marcus asked. "I stopped taking the smoothies this morning." Ethan. Confirmed. Pretended to drink it, then dumped it when she wasn't looking. By afternoon, I started feeling different. More clear-headed. More like myself. He looked up at me, real pain in his eyes. How did I not see what was happening? Liv? The nickname, the one he had used all our lives, abandoned when Vanessa entered the picture, sent a surge of emotion through me. I moved to sit beside him, taking his hand. "Because that's how emotional abuse works," I said gently. "It's gradual, insidious. Each small change seems reasonable in isolation, until suddenly you're living a life you don't recognize." He squeezed my hand, holding on like it was a lifeline. "There's a text conversation between Vanessa and Grace from 3 months ago, discussing how to handle the sister problem. Vanessa suggested several options. Staging a fight that would justify cutting you out, creating so many scheduling conflicts that we naturally drifted apart, or the direct approach of excluding you from the wedding based on some fabricated tradition. And she chose option 3, I said. After I resisted the first 2, Ethan admitted. I kept insisting on maintaining our relationship, kept trying to include you in our plans. So she escalated. Marcus had been quietly observing, but now he leaned forward. Ethan, what are you planning to do? The wedding is in 4 days. A bleak expression crossed my brother's face. I don't know. Part of me wants to confront her, demand explanations. Another part is terrified of what she might do if she realizes. I know. And another part? He trailed off. Another part still loves her, I finished for him. Still wants to believe this is somehow a misunderstanding, that the woman you fell in love with is real. He nodded miserably. Is that crazy? After everything I've seen? No, I assured him. It's human. You gave her your heart. That's not something you can switch off instantly, even when faced with evidence of betrayal. But you need to protect yourself, Marcus added firmly. Whatever you decide about the relationship long-term, your immediate priority should be getting completely off any medication she's been giving you without your knowledge, and ensuring she can't escalate her control tactics when she realizes something's wrong. Ethan leaned back, closing his eyes briefly. I've been thinking about that. I can't go back to the apartment tonight. I'm not ready to face her while I'm still processing all this. But I can't just disappear either. She'd know something was wrong immediately. Stay here, I suggested. In the main house. Tell her. You fell asleep at the office working on a deadline project. He shook his head. She'd never believe that. I haven't spent a night away from her in over a year. She's made sure of that. And according to her schedule, we have breakfast with her parents tomorrow morning to discuss final wedding details. The resigned way he referenced her schedule highlighted just how thoroughly she controlled his life. Every hour accounted for, every movement tracked, every relationship carefully managed. What if you got sick? Marcus suggested. Food poisoning from that late-night takeout at the office. Something dramatic enough to justify isolating yourself. For a day or 2, but not serious enough to require her physical presence. Ethan considered this. That might work. She hates being around illness. Always claims she's especially susceptible. Perfect, I said. You can say you're quarantining yourself at a hotel to avoid getting her sick before the wedding. That gives us time to figure out next steps. Us, Ethan repeated, looking between Marcus and me. You're still willing to help me after everything? After I shut you out? Believe the worst about you? You're my brother, I said simply. That hasn't changed. It will never change. And you're my best friend, Marcus added. Not to mention the creative genius behind our entire company. I'm not about to let some manipulative wannabe socialite turn you into her personal puppet. For the first time that evening, Ethan's mouth quirked in a hint of his old smile. When you put it that way. Then the smile faded. But what about after? Even if I get through the next few days without her realizing what's happening, I still have to decide whether to go through with the wedding. A heavy silence fell over the clubhouse. We all understood the magnitude of what he was facing. Not just extracting himself from Vanessa's immediate control, but potentially calling off a high-profile wedding days before it was scheduled to occur, with all the personal and professional fallout that would entail. You don't have to decide everything tonight, I told him gently. Right now, focus on getting physically and mentally clear of her influence. Once you're thinking clearly, without medications or manipulation clouding your judgment, you'll know what to do. His eyes met mine, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen since our parents died. What if I'm not strong enough, Liv? What if I go back to her, even knowing what she's done? The question broke my heart. My brilliant, confident brother, reduced to doubting his own strength, his own worth. This, more than anything, showed the devastating impact of Vanessa's abuse. You are the strongest person I know, Ethan Campbell, I said firmly. You built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing. You held our family together after we lost Mom and Dad. You turned a struggling vineyard into one of the premier properties in the valley. And most importantly, you're sitting here now, fighting to reclaim yourself despite months of systematic emotional manipulation. I peered over his shoulder at the messages. He was right. For someone whose fiancé was violently ill 3 days before their wedding, she seemed remarkably uninterested in providing in-person support. That's convenient for us, but still disturbing, I observed. Does she ever visit you when you're sick? Not if she can avoid it, Ethan admitted. She claims she has an unusually sensitive immune system. Gets me the best doctors, the best medications, but maintains physical distance. I always thought it was just a quirk. Or a convenient way to administer medication without risking you noticing her slipping something extra into it, I suggested. He winced. That thought occurred to me around 3 a.m. Ethan looked better than he had the night before, still tired, but with more color in his face, more focus in his eyes. The fog of medication was clearly lifting, allowing his natural sharpness to reassert itself. How are you feeling? I asked, setting a cup of coffee in front of him. Real coffee, not the specially prepared brew Vanessa insisted was better for his anxiety. Physically? Shaky, bit of a headache. I looked up withdrawal symptoms from lorazepam. I'm right on schedule. He took a grateful sip of the coffee. Mentally? Like I'm waking up from a very long, very strange dream. That's the best description of escaping manipulation I've ever heard, said a voice from the doorway. We turned to see Grace Chen standing there, looking nervous but determined. I had texted her the new developments late last night, but hadn't expected her to drive up from the city so early. Grace. Ethan stood, his expression a mixture of gratitude and wariness. Thank you for the evidence, for reaching out to Olivia, for seeing what was happening when I couldn't. She entered the kitchen, setting her purse on the counter. Don't thank me. I should have done something months ago. Years, really. Vanessa has been like this since we were children. Controlling. Manipulative. Creating perfect scenarios and destroying anyone who threatens them. Have you spoken to her? I asked, pouring another cup of coffee. Grace shook her head. Not since yesterday afternoon. She thinks I'm at a spa retreat in Napa. It was already on my calendar as part of the pre-wedding activities. But I needed to come here, to make sure you understand what you're dealing with. Which is what? exactly?" Ethan asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "A narcissist with borderline tendencies and exceptional intelligence," Grace said bluntly. "Someone who sees relationships as acquisitions, people as possessions or obstacles. Someone who will not accept rejection or loss of control without significant retaliation." The clinical assessment sent a chill through me. "You think she'll seek revenge if Ethan calls off the wedding?" "I think she'll burn down everything he loves if she feels humiliated or exposed," Grace confirmed. "That's why we need a strategy, not just an escape plan." Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and grimaced. "Speaking of strategy, the video breakfast with her parents starts in 20 minutes. I need to look convincingly ill while discussing flower arrangements and toast protocols." "You're still going through with that?" I asked, surprised. "For now," he nodded. "Until we have a clear plan, it's best if Vanessa doesn't suspect anything has changed. I've had a lot of practice pretending to be the version of myself she created. I can maintain the facade a little longer." I didn't like it, but I understood the logic. "Use the study in the guest house for the call. The lighting is terrible. It'll help you look properly sick." As Ethan went to prepare, Grace turned to me with a serious expression. "There's something else you should know. Something I discovered last night while going through more of Vanessa's correspondence." The gravity in her voice alarmed me. "What is it?" "Vanessa has been in contact with developers about the vineyard, specifically about converting it into luxury vacation properties after she and Ethan are married." My blood ran cold. "That's impossible. Ethan would never agree to that. This land has been in our family for generations." "The Ethan you know wouldn't agree," Grace corrected. "But the Ethan she's been carefully crafting? The one who's been told repeatedly that sentimentality is holding back his potential? The one who's been medicated into compliance? He might eventually be convinced it was his idea all along." I sank into a chair, momentarily overwhelmed by the revelation. The vineyard wasn't just a business to us. It was our heritage, our parents' legacy, the physical embodiment of our family's history and values. The thought of it being carved up into vacation homes for the wealthy made me physically ill. "Does Ethan know about this?" Grace shook her head. "I only found the emails last night. They're on the USB drive, but I doubt he's gotten that far in his review of the evidence." "We need to tell him," I decided, standing up. "Not right before this video call. It would be too much, but as soon as he's done, he needs to understand exactly what's at stake." Grace agreed, and we spent the next hour planning while Ethan conducted his video breakfast with Vanessa and her parents. When he emerged from the study, his expression was a mixture of disgust and amazement. "They spent 45 minutes discussing the exact shade of white for the napkins," he reported, collapsing onto a kitchen chair. "Not once did anyone ask how I was actually feeling, beyond establishing that I probably wouldn't infect the wedding guests." "Speaking of the wedding," I began carefully, "there's something else you need to see." I nodded to Grace, who pulled up the relevant emails on her tablet and handed it to Ethan. His expression darkened as he read, transitioning from confusion to disbelief to fury. "Luxury condos?" he finally managed, his voice dangerously quiet. "She wants to tear down the vineyard, our family's legacy, for vacation properties?" "According to the correspondence, it was going to be presented to you as a logical business decision after the honeymoon," Grace explained. "A way to maximize the property's potential and free you from outdated sentimentality." Ethan's hands were shaking, but this time not from medication withdrawal. "This property isn't just land to me. It's everything. It's where Mom taught us about different grape varieties, where Dad showed me how to drive a tractor, where we scattered their ashes for God's sake." I placed a hand on his arm, feeling the tension vibrating through him. "I know." "She knew too," he said, his voice hardening. I told her all of this. I shared these memories with her, these connections, and He trailed off, unable to articulate the depth of the betrayal. She saw it as leverage, Grace finished quietly. Information she could use to gradually separate you from what matters most. Ethan stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen. I've been such a fool, so completely blind to what was happening. No, I said firmly. You've been a victim of sophisticated emotional manipulation. There's a difference. She's right, Grace agreed. Vanessa has had years to perfect these techniques. She targets carefully, kind, successful people with deep emotional connections that she can exploit. People whose fundamental decency makes them vulnerable to her particular brand of manipulation. Ethan stopped pacing, his expression shifting from self-recrimination to resolve. It doesn't matter how I got here. What matters is what I do now. He looked between Grace and me. The wedding is off, obviously, but we need to be strategic about how I end things. I nodded, relieved that he had reached this decision on his own. Grace was just saying the same thing. Vanessa won't accept rejection gracefully, Grace warned. She'll try to hurt you, damage your reputation, possibly even try to harm your company or the vineyard out of spite. Let her try, Ethan said grimly. I'd rather face her revenge than spend another day under her control. His determination was inspiring, but I shared Grace's concerns about Vanessa's potential for destruction. We need a plan that minimizes the fallout, not just for you personally, but for everyone in your life. For the next several hours, the three of us strategized. Marcus joined us mid-morning, bringing additional security measures for Ethan's company servers and documentation of the unauthorized changes Vanessa had been pushing through corporate channels. She's been systematically redirecting resources away from your educational initiatives, Marcus reported, spreading papers across the kitchen table. Small amounts, carefully justified, but adding up to millions diverted from the projects you care most about. Ethan reviewed the evidence, his expression growing increasingly determined. This ends now, all of it. By mid-afternoon, we had developed a comprehensive approach. First, Ethan would consult with a doctor specialized in medication withdrawal, ensuring he could safely clear the lorazepam from his system without dangerous side effects. Second, Marcus would secure the company, changing access codes and implementing temporary signature requirements for financial decisions to prevent any last-minute damage from Vanessa. Third, I would work with our family lawyer to ensure the vineyard was legally protected, updating documentation to explicitly prohibit development or sale without unanimous agreement from both Ethan and me. Finally, Ethan would meet with Vanessa in a public location to end the engagement, with security present and key evidence at hand to counter any immediate accusations she might make. What about the wedding itself? I asked as we reviewed the plan. There are guests flying in, vendors with contracts, a reputation impact to consider. I'll cover the financial costs, Ethan said firmly. As for reputation, I'm done caring about the carefully constructed image Vanessa created. I want my real life back, with all its messy authenticity. Grace nodded approvingly. That's the healthiest thing I've heard you say in months. As evening approached, Ethan prepared to return to the city. He needed to maintain the illusion of his food poisoning recovery while putting our plans into motion. The wedding was still 2 days away, enough time to execute our strategy if we moved quickly. Be careful, I urged as he prepared to leave. Vanessa is smart. If she senses something's changed, I know, he assured me. I've been playing a role for months now. I can manage one more day of performance. I hugged him tightly. Call me if anything changes. And Ethan, I'm proud of you. It takes enormous courage to admit you've been manipulated, and even more to break free. His eyes, clearer now than they had been in months, met mine steadily. I couldn't have done it without you. Without you refusing to give up on me, even when I pushed you away. After he left, with Marcus accompanying him back to the city, Grace and I remained at the vineyard, continuing to work through contingency plans. You saved him, you know, Grace said as we walked through the vines in the dying light. By standing your ground about the venue, by refusing to accept the lie about cultural traditions. If you had simply gone along with it all, he might never have broken free. I wasn't trying to save him, I admitted. I was just trying to maintain my own boundaries, protect what mattered to me. Sometimes that's how we save each other, she observed, by being authentic ourselves, by refusing to participate in someone else's carefully constructed reality. Her words struck me as profoundly true. In standing up for myself, I had created the opportunity for Ethan to remember who he truly was. Not through confrontation or ultimatums, but by simply remaining steadfast in my own truth. The next morning brought a flurry of activity. Our family lawyer arrived at the vineyard to update the legal protections on the property. Marcus reported that company security protocols had been successfully strengthened. The doctor Ethan consulted confirmed that his withdrawal symptoms, while unpleasant, weren't dangerous given the relatively short duration of his medication. Everything was proceeding according to plan. And then, shortly after noon, Ethan called. She knows, he said without preamble, his voice tense. She showed up at the office unannounced, wanted to check on me since I was feeling better. I think she suspected something when I declined her offer to bring over a special recovery smoothie this morning. My heart raced. What happened? Nothing yet. I maintained the act, told her I was still feeling weak but needed to handle some urgent business matters. She seemed to accept it, but what? Her eyes, Liv, they were different, calculating, like she was reassessing. Everything. Where are you now? I asked, already moving toward my car keys. Still at the office. I've got Marcus and 2 of our security team with me. But I'm worried about the apartment, my passport, financial documents, other things I'll need. Do not go back to that apartment alone, I said firmly. In fact, don't go back at all. We can replace documents. We can't replace you. I won't, he promised. But Liv, there's something else. When Vanessa was here, she mentioned the vineyard. Specifically, she said she was thinking we might spend some recovery time there after the honeymoon. That she'd been making plans for the property. Alarm shot through me. You think she might come here? I think she's suspicious and getting desperate. Just be careful. After we hung up, I immediately called Grace, who had gone into town for supplies. Don't come back to the vineyard, I instructed. Meet me at the sheriff's office in town. I'll explain when I get there. I was halfway to my car when I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. A sleek black SUV was approaching, one I recognized as Vanessa's. My stomach dropped, but I forced myself to remain calm. Running would only confirm her suspicions. Instead, I walked toward the main house, planning to lock myself inside and call for help if necessary. But Vanessa was too quick. She pulled up alongside me, the window lowering to reveal her perfectly composed face. Olivia, she greeted me, her voice pleasant, but her eyes cold. What a lovely surprise. I was just in the area and thought I'd stop by to discuss the wedding. The wedding you explicitly uninvited me from? I kept my tone neutral, betraying none of the anxiety coursing through me. About that. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I've been reconsidering. Family is so important to Ethan, and despite our differences, I think he would want you there after all. The abrupt reversal confirmed my worst fears. She knew something, was wrong, and was desperately trying to regain control of the situation. How thoughtful, I replied carefully. But I've made other plans for that day. You understand. Her smile tightened fractionally. Perhaps we could discuss it over coffee? I'd love to clear the air between us. For Ethan's sake. Every instinct warned me not to be alone with this woman, but refusing outright might escalate the situation dangerously. I needed to buy time, to alert Ethan and the others. "Coffee sounds great," I said, reaching into my pocket where my phone was still connected to Ethan's call. I subtly pressed the speaker button, hoping he would hear and understand. "Let me just grab my purse from inside." Vanessa's eyes narrowed slightly. "I'll come with you. It's been ages since I've seen the inside of the main house." Trap detected. If she came inside, I'd be isolated with her. "Actually, let's meet at Rosewood Cafe in town," I suggested instead. "Their pastries are amazing, and I was heading into town anyway for a meeting." For a moment, I thought she might refuse or insist on coming inside. Then her expression smoothed into that practiced smile again. "Perfect. I'll meet you there in 20 minutes?" I nodded, relief flooding through me. "See you there." As she drove away, I immediately pulled out my phone. "Ethan, did you hear that?" "Every word," his voice crackled through the speaker. "She's fishing, trying to figure out how much you know. Do not meet her alone." "I won't," I promised. "I'm calling the sheriff and then meeting Grace. We'll have plenty of witnesses around." "I'm on my way," Ethan said firmly. "Marcus and I are leaving now. We'll be there in under 2 hours." "Be careful," I warned, "if she's already suspicious." "We will. And Liv? Remember what we're fighting for here. Not just to escape her control, but to reclaim our lives, our connections, our authenticity. Everything she tried to take from us." His words steadied me, reminding me of the stakes. This wasn't just about a wedding, or even about Vanessa's manipulation. It was about preserving what mattered most: our family bond, our shared legacy, our right to live truthfully rather than according to someone else's script. I made it to the sheriff's office in record time, quickly explaining the situation to both Grace and Sheriff Daniels, an old family friend. To his credit, Daniels took the situation seriously, especially when I showed him the documentation of unauthorized medication and the developer correspondence about the vineyard. "I can have a deputy present at this meeting," he offered. "Not officially intervening, just having coffee nearby. And I'll send someone out to keep an eye on the vineyard until this situation is resolved." Gratefully accepting his help, Grace and I proceeded to the Rosewood Cafe, arriving early to select a table with clear sightlines to the exits and close to where other patrons were seated. The deputy, dressed in civilian clothes, positioned himself at a corner table with a clear view of our meeting. Vanessa arrived precisely on time, looking immaculate in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. If she noticed the deputy or the strategic seating arrangement, she gave no indication. "Olivia, Grace?" Her surprise at seeing her sister seemed genuine. "I didn't expect both of you. What a lovely reunion." "Isn't it?" Grace replied coolly. "Almost as surprising as your sudden desire to include Olivia in the wedding." Vanessa's eyes hardened momentarily before her smile reasserted itself. "I've simply had a change of heart. After reflecting on Ethan's family values, I realized I may have been hasty in my decision." "Hasty," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling deliberate exclusion based on a fabricated cultural tradition?" Her expression didn't waver, but I noticed her hands tighten around her purse. "There seems to be some misunderstanding. The tradition is real, just flexible in its application." "Like your flexibility with Ethan's medication?" Grace interjected quietly. "Or with his company's financial resources? Or perhaps with your plans for the vineyard?" For the first time, Vanessa's composure cracked. Her eyes darted between us, calculating, reassessing. "I don't know what Ethan has been telling you, but he's been under tremendous pressure lately. The wedding planning, work stress, it's affected his perception of things." "His perception is clearer now than it's been in months," I countered. "Probably because he's no longer ingesting lorazepam with his morning smoothie." The directness of the accusation clearly caught her off guard. For a moment, naked fury flashed across her features before she controlled it. That's absurd. Ethan has an anxiety disorder. His medication is prescribed and necessary. By Dr. Hammond? Grace asked innocently. Interesting, since I spoke with his office this morning. They have no patient by the name of Ethan Campbell. Vanessa's breathing quickened slightly, the only visible sign of her escalating anger. This is ridiculous. I came here to extend an olive branch to include you in our special day, and instead I'm being accused of. What exactly? Caring for my fiancé's health? Being involved in his business decisions? Planning a future for property that will soon be partly mine through marriage? The vineyard will never be yours, I said quietly but firmly. And as of this morning, it's legally protected from the development plans you've been secretly making. Her eyes narrowed. You have no idea what you're talking about. Actually, I have emails, text messages, and meeting notes detailing your correspondence with Coastal Luxury Developments. Would you like me to show you? Or would you prefer to see the documentation of your systematic isolation techniques, the financial records of company funds being diverted, the evidence of unauthorized medication? With each question, her composure deteriorated further. By the time I finished, her face had transformed, the mask of perfect poise replaced by something cold and dangerous. You think you've won, she hissed, leaning forward. You think you can turn Ethan against me after everything I've done to improve him, to elevate him beyond the provincial, sentimental fool he was when I found him? Improve him? I echoed, genuinely horrified. Ethan was already remarkable, before you entered his life. Brilliant, compassionate, authentic. You didn't improve him. You tried to erase everything that made him special and replace it with your idea of perfection. My idea of perfection is what made him successful, she snapped. Who introduced him to the investors that doubled his company's valuation? Who connected him with the social circles that legitimized his status? Who taught him how to present himself as someone worthy of respect, rather than just another tech nerd with idealistic dreams? He was always worthy of respect, Grace said softly. The fact that you couldn't see that says everything about you. Nothing about him. Vanessa turned on her sister, eyes blazing. You ungrateful little traitor. After everything I've done. For you? This is how you repay me? By conspiring with her? You've never done anything for me that didn't somehow serve your own interests, Grace replied with surprising steadiness. And I'm not conspiring against you. I'm finally refusing to be complicit in your manipulation of someone who deserves better. For a moment, I thought Vanessa might physically lash out at her sister. Instead, she gathered her purse and stood, her movements precise despite her evident fury. This isn't over, she said, her voice low and controlled once more. Ethan belongs with me. He chose me. And when he realizes what a mistake he's making, don't expect me to be merciful about taking him back. With that parting threat, she stalked out of the cafe, leaving an almost palpable cloud of rage in her wake. Grace exhaled shakily. That went about as well as could be expected. She's dangerous, I said, watching through the window as Vanessa's SUV peeled out of the parking lot. More than I realized. Yes, Grace agreed grimly. And now she's cornered, which makes her even more unpredictable. The deputy approached our table. Everything okay here? That looked intense. For now, I said. But I'm concerned about what she might do next. Can we increase security at the vineyard? And someone should warn Ethan. She might try to intercept him on his way here. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of activity. The sheriff stationed a deputy at the vineyard entrance. Grace and I returned to the property accompanied by another officer, taking inventory of what needed to be secured. I called our vendors and employees, instructing them to be on high alert for any attempts by Vanessa to access the property or information about our operations. When Ethan finally arrived with Marcus, the relief I felt was overwhelming. He looked exhausted but resolute, more like himself than he had in months. "Vanessa's gone to ground," he reported, accepting the coffee I handed him. "She's not at the apartment, not at her office. Her assistant claims she's taken personal days to deal with wedding preparations." "She confronted us at the cafe," I told him, quickly summarizing the encounter. "She's angry, Ethan, and she explicitly threatened that this isn't over." He nodded grimly. "I expected as much. That's why we need to act decisively now, before she can regroup and launch a counterattack." Over the next hour, Ethan made a series of difficult phone calls. First to Vanessa's parents, explaining in carefully measured terms that the wedding was canceled due to irreconcilable differences. A deliberate understatement that nevertheless conveyed the finality of his decision. Then to the wedding planner, authorizing full payment to all vendors despite the cancellation. Finally, to a select group of close friends, quietly spreading the word and asking for support during a challenging time. With each call, I watched my brother reclaim pieces of himself, his directness, his integrity, his capacity for making difficult decisions without apology or excessive explanation. The contrast with the carefully scripted, hesitant man he had become under Vanessa's influence was striking. By evening, the immediate crisis management was complete. The vineyard was secure, the wedding officially canceled, the most important, relationships salvaged through honest communication. All that remained was the formal ending of the engagement, something Ethan planned to handle through written communication rather than another volatile in-person confrontation. As we sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the vines in golden light, a sense of cautious peace settled over us. The danger wasn't entirely past. Vanessa's threats couldn't be dismissed. But the worst of the immediate crisis had been navigated. "I keep thinking about what she said," Ethan mused, swirling a glass of our father's favorite Cabernet. "About improving me, making me worthy of respect, as if I was somehow deficient before her." "You weren't," I said firmly. "You were authentic, passionate about things that actually matter, connected to your history, your values, your true self." He nodded slowly. "I feel like I'm remembering who that person was. It's coming back in pieces. What I care about, what I believe in, who I want to be." "That's the thing about authenticity," Grace observed, joining us on the porch. "It can be buried, obscured, even temporarily forgotten, but never truly destroyed. It's always waiting to be reclaimed." Marcus raised his glass in a toast. "To reclamation, then, of self, of purpose, of truth." We clinked glasses as the last rays of sunlight stretched across the vineyard, the land our parents had loved, that Ethan and I had preserved, that Vanessa had tried and failed to take from us. In that moment, despite the uncertainty still ahead, I felt a profound conviction that we had fought for something essential and won. Not just a wedding venue or a family property, but the right to live authentically, to maintain connections that matter, to honor our history while creating our own futures. The right to be imperfect, complicated, real people rather than someone else's carefully crafted idea of perfection. Ethan caught my eye across the porch, a genuine smile. His smile, not the polished version Vanessa had cultivated, warming. His features. "Thank you, Liv, for seeing what I couldn't, for fighting when I wasn't able to fight for myself." "That's what family does," I said simply. "The real kind, not the picture-perfect version that exists only for social media and wedding photos. The messy, complicated, unbreakable kind." As darkness fell and the vineyard settled into nighttime stillness, I reflected on the journey we had navigated. From the initial hurt of exclusion to the disturbing revelations of manipulation, from the painful recognition of what Ethan had endured to the courageous steps toward freedom, each phase had tested us, strengthened us, reminded us of what truly matters. There would be challenges ahead. Vanessa's threats couldn't be ignored. The emotional aftermath of breaking free from manipulation wouldn't disappear overnight, and rebuilding the authentic connections that had been damaged would take time and patience. But sitting there in the growing darkness, surrounded by the people who had stood firm in truth when it would have been easier to look away, I felt something that had been missing throughout the wedding drama: hope. Not the superficial optimism that everything would be perfect, but the deeper conviction that by choosing authenticity over appearance, truth over convenience, and genuine connection over controlled performance, we were already living a more meaningful reality than any carefully curated wedding could have represented. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for each other isn't to accept whatever treatment is offered, but to stand firmly in our own truth, creating space for others to find their way back to theirs. In refusing to participate in the fiction of the perfect wedding that excluded me, I had inadvertently created the opportunity for my brother to recognize the larger fiction that had been constructed around his life. As the stars emerged above the vineyard that had witnessed generations of our family's story, I made a silent promise to myself to always value authenticity over appearance, to recognize manipulation in all its subtle forms, and to fight for the people I love, not by accepting their worst choices, but by believing in their capacity to reconnect with their best selves. That, I realized, was the true meaning of family. Not a perfect, curated image for public consumption, but a messy, resilient bond that survives our mistakes, challenges our self-deceptions, and ultimately guides us back to the truth of who we are and what matters most. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.